the United States, it was the financial crisis that secured Obama's victory. Americans wanted to change course.
Hello, Chicago!
This crisis is clearly understood by almost everyone as being the direct result of this particular ideology of deregulation and privatization.
The scale of the crisis offers the hope of change.
The shock doctrine as a strategy relies on us not knowing about it for it to work. And what I find most hopeful about the current economic crisis is that this tactic is getting tired, because that element of surprise is no longer there. We're on to them, and it's not working. We're becoming shock resistant.
The last time the world suffered a financial crisis as severe as this, people turned to the Keynesian policies of the New Deal.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
More than 1 million people came to Washington to hear Obama's inauguration speech. Many journalists made comparisons with FDR.
Now, there's been a lot of talk recently about comparing Obama to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So I want to talk a little bit about FDR, because there's a great FDR story, and it could be an apocryphal one, about when he would be visited by some progressive organization or a union, and they would be proposing some new progressive policy that they wanted to be part of the New Deal. And he would hear them out, and he would listen to them, and then at the end he would say, "Now go out there and make me do it." And they did. In 1937, which was a pivotal year for the New Deal, do you know how many strikes there were in this country? 4,740 strikes, lasting an average of 20 days. Do you know how many strikes there were in 2007? 21. Now, the other reason to remember this history of struggle is that it tells us something very important, something that we need to remember at this moment when so much is at stake. It teaches us that if we want responses to this economic crisis that leave us with a world that is healthier, that is more just, that is more peaceful, we are going to have to go out there and make them do it. Thank you.
It is in the nature of unregulated markets to be volatile. Bubbles are allowed to inflate, and then, inevitably, they burst. Since the deregulation of the Big Bang in the 80s, there have been a number of market shocks. In 1987, there was Black Monday. Markets fell spectacularly. It was the largest one-day percentage decline in stock market history. In 1992, there was Black Wednesday, when currency speculators made fortunes betting against the pound. In 1997, there was the Asian contagion. In 1 year, $600 billion disappeared from the stock markets of Asia. And then, in September 2008, the financial markets imploded.
The market is not functioning properly. There has been a widespread loss of confidence.
On September the 15th, Lehman Brothers filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Yet only 1 week later, it was announced that workers at their New York office would share $2.5 billion in bonuses. It is estimated that Wall Street firms paid $18.4 billion in bonuses last year, the year of the crash.
Despite the torrent of populist rhetoric about taking on the fat cats and standing up for the little guy and saving Main Street, not Wall Street, we are witnessing a transfer of wealth of unfathomable size. It is a transfer of wealth from public hands, from the hands of government, collected from regular people in the form of taxes, into the hands of the wealthiest corporations and individuals in the world. Needless to say, the very individuals and corporations that created this crisis.
When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in August 2005, the world was shocked to witness a sort of disaster apartheid. The economically secure drove out of town, while tens of thousands of the vulnerable were stranded with little or no help from the state.
I went to New Orleans while the city was still underwater, and what I saw was that what I had witnessed in Iraq was repeating, not in the aftermath of a war, but in the aftermath of a tremendous natural disaster. Milton Friedman died in 2006. His very last piece of public policy recommendation was an op-ed he wrote for the Wall Street Journal 3 months after Katrina. He said, "Most New Orleans schools are in ruins, as are the homes of children who have attended them. The children are now scattered all over the country. This is a tragedy. It is also an opportunity to radically reform the education system." He was advocating the wholesale privatization of the school system of this city. It was his sort of swan song. I've witnessed a similar process in Sri Lanka in the aftermath of the 2004 tsunami. People who lived on the beaches for generations were prevented from returning so that the land could be privatized and sold off to luxury hotels. And this is exactly what I mean by the shock doctrine, the systematic raiding of the public sphere in the aftermath of a disaster. When people are too focused on the emergency, on their daily concerns, to protect their interests.
Just as Cameron's shock therapy left his patients confused and broken, so the multiple shocks inflicted on Iraq reduced the country to a lawless, violent, sectarian mess. By the time of Saddam Hussein's execution in 2006, 1,000 Iraqis were being killed each week. By April 2007, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees estimated 4 million people had had to leave their homes. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis had died.
I think the historians will write very clearly that we did a great and noble thing here.
ضد الإرهاب الأمريكي، لأن الأمريكان يقتلون النساء ويعتقلون النساء ويقتلون الأطفال ويهينون الشيوخ ويقتلون الشباب. أمريكا بحالها هي الإرهاب.
After those attacks. Who are these people? Where did they come from? Why do they hate us? There was a total loss of collective narrative. We were not living in the world that we thought we lived in. And we kept hearing from our political leaders that everything we thought we understood before the attacks no longer applied. There was a new phrase, pre-9/11 thinking. And what happened in that moment is that suddenly news stories sort of magically appeared. That we were in a clash of civilizations. That's the world that we suddenly lived in. That there was an axis of evil, and that we were fighting a war against terror.
This abstract, unwinnable war has had huge economic consequences. Before 2001, Homeland Security barely registered as an industry. Today, it is bigger than Hollywood and the music industry combined. Between September the 11th, 2001 and 2006, the Department of Homeland Security handed out $130 billion to private contractors. This is the disaster capitalism complex, a new economy built on fear.
This will be a monumental struggle of good versus evil.